Let's explore how beef stroganoff might have been made in Russian Empire based on traditional methods. This recipe isn't what you'll find in a cardboard box or see in a typical Google image search for beef stroganoff, which contain an abundance of mushrooms. Mushrooms were a seasonal thing in Russia. You had to go to the forest to pick them. They were introduced into beef stroganoff in America sometime between 1950 and 1960. This recipe is close to the 19th century original, which was first mentioned by Elena Malachowicz in her cookbook A Gift to the Young Housewife. It was published in 1861. By the time the book traveled to United States, for some reason, housewife became housewives, plural. Oh well, that's beside the point. The original version contained only beef, salt, spice, butter and flour to make the roux, broth, mustard, and black pepper. Sour cream was served on the side. No mushrooms, no ketchup, no onions. But dishes change and evolve over time. If you're intrigued by how history, dark and tumultuous at times, influences recipes, buckle up for an enlightening ride. On the other hand, if all you want is the recipe, it is in the description of this video. Please copy it, print it, go to the kitchen and make one. Don't let the old man keep you. Let's start with the ingredients. The recipe calls for broth, or a bouillon as we call it. I will make the beef broth as it was done in my family for more than 3 generations. For that, we will need a good shank. The best broth is done from the bone, not from the meat. Furthermore, in my broth I use carrots, stick of celery, bay leaf, an onion, and I will probably add a bundle of herbs, such as dill and parsley. Salt and pepper will be used in both the beef stroganoff and the broth. For the beef stroganoff, we will need a tablespoon of flour to make the roux, a little bit of broth, most likely about a tablespoon or 2, we'll see how it goes, 5 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 4 tablespoons for the roux, and 1 to fry the meat with. Some peppercorns, actually that is also in the broth, not the beef. Yellow mustard, the stronger the better. Allspice, which is a must-have for the old ways. And for the beef I will be using the sirloin, but if you want you can use tenderloin instead. I will have mine with a side of rice as it is proper. That'd be the glass jar in the back. It's not part of the recipe though. Let's prep our sirloin. Wash it and cut it into small cubes, of about 1 inch on one side or so, like this. Now grab a bowl and smear your beef cubes with allspice and some salt. Cover with food plastic and put it in the fridge for 2 hours. This will allow us enough time to prepare the broth. I will be using only a tablespoon or 2 of it for the recipe, but that does not mean that the rest of it will be wasted. I have many uses for it. Some of it I might even showcase on this channel. Here is how beef or chicken broth is done in my family, for at least 3 generations. Clean your carrots, or carrot, and cut them in a few large pieces. Do the same with the celery sticks. Peel the outer layer of the onion, but don't cut it. Wash the shank. Make sure you get rid of all the excess blood from it, else it will coagulate and make your job of making clear nice bouillon much harder. Place the shank at the bottom of the pot, followed by the veg. Now we'll make a small bundle of herbs. In my case, I'm using parsley and dill. Some use parsley and thyme. I don't like thyme in my broth. It is too sharp for my taste, so I use dill instead. It gives the bouillon a nice gentle touch. But if you prefer thyme, use thyme. Far it be for me to tell you otherwise. Add a few peppercorns. Fill the pot with cold filtered water, but leave some space at the top, and do not forget to stick a few bay leaves in there. Not bay leaves, YouTube. Bay leaves. This is not a Jeffrey Dahmer recipe. Wrong channel. I swear one day my stupid jokes will get the best of me. Set it on a high heat and bring it to boil. As soon as it reaches the boiling point, switch to the low simmer. Also, try not to cook the string with which you have made the herb bundle. It's not there to improve the flavor, only to keep the herbs in a bunch. Now you have to stand here and watch it like a hawk. Remove all and any foam that appears. Do not let that thing to break into the broth. If it does, the broth will be muddy. We're not trying to make a lower Mississippi River here. Think of a mountain stream and strive for that. Once everything is hot, put some salt. The salt will dissolve faster in hot water, and the diffusion will take care of the rest. Speaking of diffusion, the original recipe does not use sour cream. It relies on mustard and natural juices of the beef. With the coming of the Bolshevik Revolution at the beginning of the 20th century, 100 years ago, the recipe has evolved to include sautéed onions with the beef and the sour cream in the sauce. Keep removing the foam and check the temperature. We have to be just below the boiling point, hovering right about 200 degrees or 90 degrees Celsius if you use metrics. The onion augmented version was in use in the early Soviet era under the so-called New Economic Policies, or NEP, which was introduced in 1921 by Vladimir Lenin when he realized, to his horror, that under his central planning policies, the country could not survive without the help of the private enterprise. Private enterprise ushered in a brief renaissance of culinary traditions. Peasantry was adopting the noble kitchen recipes to the peasant cooking methods. Thus, in come the onions. In his acclaimed book Master and Margarita, Mikhail Bulgakov describes a restaurant fare of those days. Судачки à la naturelle. That is something I'd like to dig up one day and see if I can make it. Renaissance did not last long. Lenin died just 3 years into his NEP program and was replaced by Joseph Stalin. Our bouillon is done. It took about 45 minutes. After we got to the boiling point, remove everything from it and strain it through the cheesecloth like this. Look at it. Nice and clear liquid, no strange brown things swimming in it. And it is very gentle, because there is no thyme in it. In a pinch, this bouillon can be served with a spoon of cooked rice or some noodles. That was my staple diet back in the workers' paradise. Beef Stroganoff vanished from Russian tables along with housewives and everything else in or around Golodomor period. Golodomor, translated directly to English, is death by starvation. The famine peaked in 1932 and 1933. It was a direct result of Stalin policy of cancelling NEP and applying Marxism to agriculture, seizing means of production and forced collectivization of the farms. The most affected area was Ukraine, a former breadbasket that provided food for most of the Europe during the imperial times. Millions of Ukrainians died due to starvation. The rest of the country did not fare any better. Beef Stroganoff immigrated to the West, first to France because Russian nobility spoke French. It evolved there as the locals were adapting and augmenting the recipe, changing their ingredients and cooking methods to their taste. Meantime, in Russia, the shortages of food continued into Khrushchev times, who took power after Stalin's death in 1953. Let's quickly throw together our side dish. Take 1 cup of water and half a cup of rice. Add some spice if you like, herb de Provence in my case, some salt, and turn on your rice cooker. Time has finally come to make our beef stroganoff. Let's set up for the cooking session. We will not have time to mock about once we start. We will use 2 skillets, one for making the sauce and the other for cooking the beef. Take the butter and put 4 tablespoons in the small skillet and 1 tablespoon into the other. When the little piece of butter melted down, put your marinated meat in. Melt the other piece slowly. Meantime, cover the meat with the net to manage the spray and keep your stove clean. Mind to turn your beef cubes. We want them to cook on all sides on a medium heat now. Once we add the sauce, we will reduce the heat to the low and then to simmer, else the sauce will burn and the dish will be ruined. Once the butter is melted in the sauce skillet, add the flour and whisk it. This is a light roux. Unlike the bechamel sauce that we did in the pork casserole video, this sauce is not as creamy. Khrushchev managed to secure some grain deals with Canada in 1963, 10 years after Stalin. With the food deals, some of the foreign products started to appear in Soviet kitchens, including tomato paste and ketchup. Beef stroganoff of that era has developed into a simpler dish. Once you get the flour whisked into the butter, sprinkle some pepper in. The most popular sauce of that time was made with 3 parts of sour cream mixed with 1 part of ketchup, water and onions. A cheap and cheerful version, so to speak. The ketchup entirely changed the flavor of the dish. If the original relied on mustard and the natural juices of the beef, the modernized version used ketchup to hide the nasty second freshness ingredients that were available at the time. Second freshness is a politically correct term to describe produce for the working class, i.e. past due or nearly rotten. Time to add the mustard. Shake it well and squirt a half a tablespoon. Whisk it well and don't forget to turn your beef again. At this point, I am contemplating dumping the 2 tablespoons of sour cream just before I finish cooking it. This was one of the ways to do beef stroganoff, but eventually I thought better of it and served it traditionally as a side. Turn off the heat under the beef, switch the other burner to the lowest simmer possible, place the skillet with the beef on it, and dump the sauce in. Once this beef is sufficiently smeared with the sauce, add a little bit of beef broth. Do not drown your beef in it. Just a light touch to make the sauce slightly more runny. We will simmer it like this for no more than 15 minutes. Time's up. Our rice is done, so is our classic beef stroganoff. Let's arrange the serving. Some basmati rice, cooked with herb de Provence, our beef, and a side of a sour cream, as it is proper. Here it is. Make one and taste the dish as it was 100 years ago before the ketchup and cardboard ruined it. Anyway, I will see you on the next one. Probably. Bye for now.